As far as these underwater submerged objects, a lot of people don't realize that these objects are transmedium in most cases. Um, for those that aren't aware about underwater submerged objects, in your opinion, are these things that are only underwater, or are they coming from space or wherever they're coming from in the atmosphere?
Honestly, I think they come from anywhere and everywhere. Um, my latest documentary, which is covering water-based sightings, which I'm actually going to be showing, if people come to contact in the desert, they can pull up a chair and watch on Sunday night for free. Essentially, I interviewed Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, former retired Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet. He was with the Navy for 32 years. 7 of those years, he was the chief oceanographer, the head of oceanography for the Navy. He also worked for NOAA, which, is a very important scientific agency that's always monitoring atmospheric conditions, ocean conditions around the planet. And he's a pretty smart guy. And while he was on active duty, when he was doing service for the Navy, he witnessed the Go Fast UFO come through on his email, with a whole chain of command and other people involved on this military exercise out at sea at the time. This would have been around the same time that Ryan Graves, pilot who famously saw off the coast, I think, of Virginia there, um, a sphere shaped UFO within a cube that nearly collided with the wing of his craft. So around the same time, the Go Fast UFO was recorded, and that was shared in an email on a classified, encrypted email server the Navy uses called IPSEC. And this admiral was astonished. He said in the documentary immediately he thought this was of extraterrestrial origin because we don't officially have any technology like that within the Navy, within the Air Force. We're talking about a sphere shaped object that's flying against the wind in the middle of the ocean, um, you know, and NASA has done their part to debunk the speed that that object was moving, but what is it and why was it in the middle of this airspace and why was it being brought to the attention of all of these Navy members that were thinking of scrapping their exercise out at the middle of the ocean, which takes a long time to plan, um, and the safety of flight risk because many of these objects were being observed. Um, what is it? And in the documentary, we cover like the history of these objects showing up either coming from the ocean or going into the ocean or just being over the ocean and their effects on water. So and submarines. We also cover like Navy submariners that have witnessed these objects while they were in a submarine, from the sonar booth or perspective. Um, so it seems like these objects are operating with technology that's way above anything that we have in our military arsenals around the world that is known. I think the Russians know about it. Richard Dolan in the documentary talks about a former Russian general, Vladimir Zaza, who quite profusely explained that there have been sightings all around Russian waters, and they actually had a USO research program during the former Soviet Union's military days. And the Americans have to know about it. The Canadians probably know about it. I interviewed Chris Stiles, who researched the Shag Harbor incident from 1976, and recently published a new book about the Shelburne incident called Sweep Clear 5, in which an object was seen going into the ocean, possibly two. A NATO operation was put together so that they could dive and see what had gone down in 1960 off the coast of Shelburne. This is Nova Scotia area of Canada. And apparently, through the sort of Freedom of Information Act request that Chris Stiles did in Canada, he got the logs from that mission, and he found out that um, after the divers went down to see this object, they were so spooked, the ship went to DEFCON 1, which is the highest DEFCON level you can go to. It's like nuclear war imminent type thing. And supposedly in history, we've never gone to DEFCON 1. So it's a pretty strange case. And I think these objects, I mean, if you think of people like David Grush coming forward, they could be of multiple different origins. They could be extraterrestrial, they could be extra dimensional if science can prove that. And they could be, you know, possibly a non-human intelligence that is not either of those, that is just, I guess, living in the oceans that we haven't fully become aware of. You know, a higher intelligence that eludes our perception for a long time. And there's people like Hal Puthoff, who wrote an ultra terrestrials thesis paper in the past few years. He basically talks about all of those options scientifically, and Lou Alzondo has touched on that sort of too.